Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Fatback 4 Daily for this Thursday night. There's only three of us on screen. There's a reason for that. We have tried to get a West Ham fan on to this tonight, and it didn't work. Terry from the Football Terrace is overrunning on his own stream and will try join us later, so that may happen. But of course, we have got Pete Selby from For Fuck's Sake podcast, which is just the best name for a podcast I've ever come across, and I always say it every time it comes up. Pete, how are you?
Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to the football and glad that you managed to get the podcast name spot on.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites. It genuinely is. It makes me laugh every time I see it. Yeah. Keith, you're also with us. How are you, my man?
I'm great, Gav. I'm great. Delighted to be joining us, and delighted to have a chat with Pete because I'm a big fan of his crossover stuff on the Liverpool podcast. So it's good to get another voice from another team, and another team that's not one of the big rivals, that we'd usually be speaking to. So yeah, delighted to be on.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, so the plan originally tonight was, before I go on, this show, of course, is brought to you by Paddy Power, a bookies, a website and an app. If you gamble, please gamble responsibly and remember to do so with Paddy Power. The original plan tonight was to talk around, we know where the title is going and we feel that Norwich are more or less gone. But there's so much more up for grabs at the bottom half of the table, in around the Champions League spot, Europa League spots. There's so much going on when you actually think about it. It's hard to... I looked at the Premier League table for the first time in a long time today and just watching it and looking, going, do you know what? They might feel like they have to get this football done, but there's a lot hanging on it. There's a lot hinging on it. So that's what I wanted to start off with. Pete, I'm going to start with Leicester though. And I said at the start of the season, and I think we had you on before the game at Anfield in around September. And I told you at the time that one of the teams I really wanted to watch this season was Leicester, simply because the type of players they had, the manager that they then had in place, of course, being a former Liverpool manager. But I just really wanted to watch Leicester. They really, really interested me. And it's been an interesting season, hasn't it? I think Pete is gone there.
No, I can hear you now. It's just come through. Sorry. The Wi-Fi in Leicestershire, do you know what I mean? We're in a rural place, it's not a big city at all. But, from the bit I got there regarding Leicester, super season, just an absolute super season. And it was always going to be a very interesting scenario with Brendan coming in because he was following Claude Puel, who was so disliked, even though looking in retrospect now, the deals in the transfer window and the style of play and the change of style of play he implemented has been a big help. It was a necessary kind of downturn for a season to change the way Leicester played. And Brendan's come in. Obviously, you guys know what he's like in terms of a manager on the pitch and off the pitch as well. But he's been possibly the highest profile manager that we've had. And that includes the likes of Claudio and Sven going back because of the way Leicester are in terms of the league, because of the stature that they have after the league win. And he hit the ground running straight away, very sensible, and he's made an immediate impact on and off the field. On the field, the team's playing in his style. They've really adapted to his training techniques, and they've said straight away how they enjoy his training sessions, but also the fact that he's actually got the players on side. The first thing he did was to get Pally with Jamie Vardy, to get Pally with Wes Morgan, Schmeichel, the established crew. And from that, he's developed a really good working relationship with the players and also with the fans, local media. A club like Leicester, who have local radio at the heart of the football club, been following for an awful long time, a local radio station in England, in Britain. And he instantly got on the side of local media and the fans by saying the right things. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but when you've had a manager who was terrible in his communication, not only to the players but also to the media and to the fans in Claude Puel, and you're still living on the memory of what Claudio did and the way he was, it's just nice to have that on the field. It's just been fantastic. In the Premier League, third in the league, fantastic. Hopefully we get Europe again. Champions League is what we're going for, and we're still in the FA Cup, which we've never won.
The FA Cup one was interesting because you don't really, and I'll come to Keith in a second, but the FA Cup is not really your thing, is it? And listen, it hasn't been Liverpool's thing for a long time, for the majority of the time, but it just seems that, I spoke about Leicester during the week with regards to where they'll go after this season, what they should do, and we'll get onto that later. But to see them, the Champions League spot for me is brilliant for Leicester, but to see them still in the FA Cup as well, I think does really spotlight how good a season they're having. People will say, oh, well, they're just, if you can make the argument that Arsenal haven't been good, Spurs haven't been good, United being a bit hit and miss, but it's not like Leicester have just dropped all these, the League Cup and FA Cup and just solely focused on the league. They still have an FA Cup there as well, which makes, I think, the league stuff even more impressive.
Yeah. And a semi-final of the EFL as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, semi-final of the League Cup. Very disappointed to Villa over 2 legs. And the FA Cup, we've been hitting that quarter-final. We're not winning the semi-final of the FA Cup since the mid-80s. We've been in quarter-final after quarter-final, losing on penalties to Man City, to Chelsea. We've got Chelsea in the quarter-finals this time around. But it does show you also he's taken the FA Cup seriously, Brendan has, because previously we've been one of those clubs who will rest the entire first team, even though we're 9th in the league, safe from going down, and not really going to be challenging for the Champions League places in seasons gone by, the last couple of seasons, say. And so playing weakened teams in the FA Cup is just ridiculous. Part of the problem. This time, there's been 1 or 2 changes, but and 1 or 2 favourable draws, you have to say, but you need that. And it will be just typical Leicester if they get to an FA Cup final and no one can actually go. I mean, that would be right up Leicester Street. But it is a huge thing. It's the one thing for me personally. I've always wanted to see Leicester in an FA Cup final. Never seen them in the semi-final. As I said earlier, I would love that. That's, for me, is a huge thing. Champions League is amazing. Yeah. European football, fantastic. But the FA Cup for Leicester fans is something very special because we've never won it. Older fans, 3 FA Cup finals in the 60s, the great 60s team. You've got a whole generation of fans who have been that close to winning it. And then since then, they haven't got close. It's a big thing for Leicester.
It is absolutely a massive thing. Keith, just on Leicester, I mean, we get on to other sides because I want both of your views on other sides as well. Yeah. But just on Leicester, like I've spoken to you on numerous occasions about Leicester, and like I thought they were unbelievable in the first half of the season. Anyway, I think the defeat to Liverpool at the King Power probably burst the bubble a little bit, but they've been excellent, haven't they? Now, I looked at their form in the lead up to the break in football, and there was a bit of a rough patch, but I think they finished up with a 4-0 win against Villa before football was stopped. But I don't mean to talk down on Leicester, but for a team that, you look at Liverpool and you look at City and how good they've been over the past 2 seasons together, and Chelsea, okay, they've had a transfer ban, but they're still a big club, and it's not Leicester's fault that United or Arsenal or Spurs or anything else like that haven't performed. Leicester have performed, Keith, and for me, people will say, oh, well, United haven't performed. I'd argue that if things stayed the same, now transfer windows may change that, but things staying the same, I'd still fancy Leicester to do better next season over a Spurs or an Arsenal or United. If you just started next season now, I don't think it's a flash in the pan. I think their squad is a lot better than people probably give them credit for.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of them. It in a similar way to Liverpool gets called that they're having just a lucky season, takes away what they done last season, and Leicester have, they've been steadily building. They've done good transfer business that's allowed them to build a squad, and certainly this season before the break, Dennis Pryor was coming into a bit of form. He was getting games, and they had making the Tielemans deal permanent was just a masterstroke. So the fact that they're attracting players of this caliber as well is a good sign for Leicester. So I think I think they have a great squad. I think they're someone that they're they started off so well up till Christmas, up until the game where we bet them. They were really well on our coattails, and they were second at one stage. Had leapfrog Man City, and unfortunately they did tail off of it. I think they've only had 3 wins in the league since 2020. But they're still in there, and maybe this break has come at a nice time for them, because they've some of their key players, and Pete touched on them there a minute ago with Jamie Vardy and Schmeichel. Wes Morgan doesn't really get a run now. Johnny Evans, like they're not young, so maybe the break might give them a chance to recharge the batteries and reinvigorate them a bit for the last push, because I did feel they were maybe stagnating a bit. You know, they got out to a great start, and then you'd rather nearly have a slow start and then pick up the momentum as the season goes on and finish stronger. Whereas I felt Leicester were probably doing it the other way, had a great start against all expectations and against all odds, and were starting to slow down. And could they have been caught? I don't know, because if you look at United, their form wasn't great. You know, the United won a lot of games this year. When I say this year, I mean since, you know, the turn of the new year. But a lot of them were in cup competitions and UEFA Cups. So the league form wasn't that great. But I just think Leicester are a team that have built a squad that's not a flash in the pan. You know, you can go through the squad, and Pete will know more than we will. But you name their first choice 11, and you're looking at Kasper Schmeichel, Ricardo Pereira, Ben Chilwell, Soyuncu, Evans, Ndidi, Maddison. Who else is in the midfield? I can't think of who the other midfielder is now. But then you've Vardy up front. You've Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes was sensational before the football stopped. The second half of the season, he was unbelievable. Like, he really has stepped up and become a key player. And it's players like that
I think he's brilliant.
Millions. They'll save them millions.
I think Harvey Barnes is an exceptional young player. You know, I don't know. I'll ask Pete about it now, but just on him, for me, he's so big and strong. Do you know what? And people will laugh at this. He reminds me a little bit in the way he plays, a bit like Gareth Bale. And what I mean by that is so direct, skillful, powerful. He's decent in the air. He sniffs out a goal. The amount of times you see him in around the box, at the back post and the middle of the box, I think he's a fantastic player, Harvey Barnes. Pete, he's really come on this season for you. Really come on.
Yeah, he has. We sent him on loan last year to West Brom, and he was basically too good in the first half of the season. We got him back, and he hit the ground running this year, scored a fantastic goal at Bramall Lane. And I completely agree with the comparisons to Gareth Bale in terms of playing style, because he's very quick, he's very direct, and he's quite well built. He's got big shoulders. It's quite funny when you see a picture of him when he was younger, in like a very old Leicester kit when he was a child. You can almost see that he was going to become that kind of stature of a person. His kind of shoulders, he looked a bit funny until he's kind of bulked up and built up. He's developing all the time. Who knows what kind of player he can be? We kept on saying on For Fox's Sake that he's just going to click. It's just going to work for him. He had a bit of a problem in terms of finishing. I like his style because he tends to just hit the ball really hard. That sounds really simplistic, but look at someone like Jamie Vardy. It's a technique that he's used an awful lot in not just penalties, but his general style of finishing.
Shearer made a career of it.
Exactly. It's a style which hasn't really paid off for him, apart from the odd one or two times, and that's been a bit of a criticism. But since Christmas, really, he has kicked on an awful lot, including the final goal scored in the Premier League before the break, in that 4-0 one against Aston Villa. But the team, as you've gone through, Schmeichel at the back, one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League. Johnny Evans, just a colossal, and what a brilliant signing for 3 million. Soyuncu's come into the side and has been a revelation. And we've got the best left back and the best right back in the Premier League behind the Liverpool pair. And then you go forward in Wilfred Ndidi, who I would say, even though Jamie Vardy is on for the Golden Boots, he's the player of the season for me, Wilfred Ndidi. I think he would be the best holding midfielder in the Premier League. I know you've got a very good one at Anfield, but Wilfred Ndidi is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. So clean in the tackle, very rarely fouls, very rarely gets booked. Just a really, really good player. Tillemans, and then you go forward from there with the likes of Vardy, Perez in and out the side, depends on where he's playing. Maddison and JV up top, who's banging in the goals left, right, and centre. Very settled team, and also a bench that's packed full of either young talent coming through, players who have been there and done it, with the likes of Wes Morgan and say Mark Albrighton. It just looks very good, and I completely agree with the comments of they would get better next season if this team remains as it is, because the older players are not going to slow down. Jamie Vardy's now 33, but because he hasn't played an awful lot of football in his career, he's a relatively young 33-year-old.
Yeah.
Away from that, the experienced players are in their early 30s, the likes of Johnny Evans and Kasper Schmeichel, and the rest of the team are in their early 20s. It's ridiculously good at Leicester at the moment. That's the first team.
It's a lovely mix, and you know, just when you were speaking there, I'm thinking of Liverpool. You know, and when I look at the players that are in Liverpool and the age profile of them, you know, you have got Milner that's around 33. You have the front three that are at late 20s, 28, 29. You have got Van Dijk in there. Obviously, he's in around, I think he's 27, 28. You know, and then you look at the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold. You look at players that are coming through like Nico Williams. Keanu Hoover has a massive future ahead of him. You know, Curtis Jones. And the mix seems. I'm not saying they're similar in squads. I'm saying, but the age profile, when you have got a lot of experience, a relative amount of experience plus a relative amount of youth, and you mix that with players that are just or about to approach their prime, i.e. Wilfred Ndidi, because I think Ndidi can get better. I'm being honest with you. I know where you're coming from. I think he's an outstanding defensive midfielder, and I think he, you know, when you look at Ben Chilwell being linked with the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea, I think it might be harder to keep hold of Ndidi than Chilwell, just because of the job he does, and possibly the type of player he is, and the way Premier League teams in particular like this sort of player. You know, like we talk about Fernandinho at Manchester City, and he ends up playing centre back. I can't understand why Man City are looking at Chilwell when they could go and possibly do something around Wilfred Ndidi, with forward planning for Fernandinho. But just you know, you talked about Klopp well there. And he wasn't liked, and I think it was a style of football that wasn't liked. Brendan Rodgers has come in, and he likes to play progressive football. There's no doubt about that. But how much do you think the likes of Harvey Barnes has developed and I suppose gone up a level or two because of Brendan Rodgers? Because he does give players a freedom. We've seen at Liverpool, you know, with Daniel Sturridge, with Philippe Coutinho in the early days of Rodgers. You know, he unlocks Henderson as this roving midfielder. You know, people will say he done that at Sunderland, but he was so disciplined in what he was doing. Raheem Sterling, you know, he was so good at Liverpool. How much credit do you give Brendan Rodgers for, I suppose, just giving these players a new lease of life, or just releasing them and letting them show what they can do, and building the system around them rather than building them into a system, I suppose?
That's the key thing, giving them a lot of trust and playing them, even though they may be dipping out of form, which any player, especially a young player, will do. And he's done that with Ben Chilwell. He's done that with Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes would be the player really that you would base Brendan Rodgers around, because he's the more inexperienced player. He's not a settled England international left back like Ben Chilwell. But not only in the style of football that Leicester play would it help someone like Harvey Barnes, but it is that trust. The trust, knowing a player like Barnes, who is quite direct and who will drop in and out of form, the fact that you're going to be starting. Don't worry, you'll be starting next week, you'll be starting the week after and the week after. The crowd know that, and Rodgers will say that. Oh, he's not going to get dropped if the question gets asked. And it's that confidence and that communication, which is the big thing compared to Claude Puel. The way that the two teams play, very similar, I would say. But with Brendan, there is more movement going forward, getting back, rather than just playing the ball around. It seems to me there's a lot more movement, a lot more pace, and whether that turns into more direct football at times doesn't matter. 2 touches, 3 touches through the middle, Jamie Vardy scores. It happens, but still the slow build of play from the back, which a lot of clubs have been doing for many years, but at Leicester, really, it's only been, say, the last 3 or 4 years that we've had that. But with Barnes, it's just about trust. It's all about trust. And it's with the other players as well. Knowing that, there's players in behind who can come into the side, but giving these youngsters not just the game time for one game or half a game, knowing that they're going to get 4 or 5 games and they're going to get rewarded with good performances.
Yeah. Keith, before we move on to other clubs, and I want to talk later on about, we'll concentrate a little bit on Leicester later on as to what you think they might do in the transfer market going forward, because, as good as I think their squad is, I think that they will need to make improvements because of European football, and you need to probably strengthen or make it a little bit bigger. I'm not too sure, but we get onto that later on towards the end of the show. But just for you, Keith, they fully deserve their Champions League spot, don't they? I'm looking there; I think they're 8 points ahead of Manchester United with 9 games to go. They, Liverpool and Man City Liverpool have been on a different level. Man City haven't been up to their level, but that's just what Man City do. But they're comfortable. But anybody when you look below that, Leicester, way more so than Chelsea, in my opinion, absolutely deserve this Champions League spot, don't they?
Yeah, they've been the best of the rest. We done a rank and manager show the other night, and Terry, who was meant to be on tonight, was done it with me, and I was a bit harsh on Rodgers on it, and I felt that, excuse me, I felt maybe, was Lampard more impressive this season than Rodgers? And what I meant by that was, I touched on it earlier, you start off like a train and then you start slowing down, whereas Lampard maybe had a few obstacles in the way. But the more I think about it and you look back, you're taking away the actual size. Leicester are a previous Premier League champion not too long ago, and you forget what an achievement this is, because when Leicester won the league, and I'm not trying to diminish Leicester winning the league, a lot of the big clubs were in transition that season, if I remember correct. Now, we were in an awful state ourselves. So I think Klopp had only come in that season, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the year he came in.
15, 16.
Yeah, and there was a bit of not luck about, because they were excellent. They were excellent that season, but it was, I always maybe felt that, well done to Leicester, without being patronising, well done to Leicester for winning the league. We hadn't done it, but it was their chance, and they done it, and they had a nice Champions League run the following season. But I didn't think they'd get back as quickly as they have to be challenging. And they really, when you look at it, are the 3rd best team in the league this year. And that's not a case of, well, other teams are this or other teams are that. It's on merit that they're probably the 3rd best team in the league.
It's definitely on merit, because, we could make that argument about Liverpool winning the league this year. Sure, people weren't really at the races. Yeah. That's not Liverpool's fault, and it wasn't Leicester's fault at the time, because let's be honest about it. There was loads of money swashing around the place in 15, 16. There was loads of top teams there that were making claims to be brilliant, and this player and that player and stuff, and they didn't show up. And you can blame players, you can blame coaches, managers, the structure of the club, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, 20 teams go in with 38 games to play, and whoever wins the most wins the league. And listen, if Leicester had won the league on 65 points, you go, all right, fair enough, but nobody really done. Everyone was drawing every week. They won it on 81 or 82, but they had it won with a couple of games to go, didn't they? So, they were drunk for the last 2 games, I think, which is absolutely understandable.
That's fair enough.
But my big thing is,
points
I know we are
won the league by 10 points.
Yeah, well, exactly, 10 points, exactly. So that's not a reflection on Leicester. That's a reflection. When you look at something like that, you don't make excuses for Leicester. You
they won that league fair, and they won that.
You start looking below them, and you start going, well, where were you? What were you doing? Because if this side that's not fancied can go out and do that and put up that target, and you can't meet it, you should be ashamed of yourself with all the resources you have. And that's the way I look at it, and I always have looked at it like that.
No, it is. It's a very fair point. But like I said, this season has been more of a reflection of, a team that's being built and a squad that's being built by a manager who, look, we've had Brendan as our coach, and maybe the persona of Brendan Rodgers probably goes against him an awful lot. And when he came to Liverpool, I think he was trying to run before he could walk. Whereas I think the timing has been perfect with him going to Leicester. I think he's done Liverpool and he's had a good experience and he has a bad experience. He's gone to Celtic where he's won trophies, and now he's gone to Leicester, and they're a perfectly placed club for the young manager that's very, very intelligent and very progressive with his thinking and his coaching. You know, he gets a lot of stick for a lot of the stuff he comes out with, but he is a progressive coach, and it's just the perfect storm to get Brendan in there with that squad. And they do get backed. You know, there's money there. He's being backed, and it's all.
They're an extremely well-run club.
Yeah,
from
very
what I can
well.
see.
One of the best in the league, in my opinion. You know that they sell well. They have players there to replace. Like they sold Harry Maguire for 80 million, and you'd look at that. If that was another club losing their main centre back to let's say a rival in Man United, you think that's the end of them. But no, they had Soyuncu. They didn't go out and sign him. They had him there, and they just said, right, he's in. He's the replacement. They've pocketed that money without having to do anything with it. That's how well run they are. You know, they've done good forward planning.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you speak about Johnny Evans, and every time Johnny Evans' name comes up, I just think of Arsenal and I get very frustrated because Johnny Evans was floating about. I think, was he at West Brom? You took him from for £3 million, and you're looking going, why didn't Arsenal do that? Was it not fashionable enough to take Johnny Evans and put him at the centre of Arsenal's defence because he's way better than any centre half Arsenal have, any of them. And you know the money they spend and stuff like that, and the absolute lunatics they bring in to try play a centre back for them. And Johnny Evans is sitting there going to Leicester for £3 million. It's you know, and it's not only good forward planning; it's picking the right players at the right time. Okay, you might get 2 or 3 years out with Johnny Evans, but 2 or more 3 years out with Johnny Evans get you a Champions League spot, and then it means when you're going to replace him, you're in a much healthier place to do so, rather than Arsenal, who's faffing about with David Luiz and, you know, mourning Lauren Koscielny, who wasn't that good anyway. It's madness. But I want to move on to teams slightly below Leicester. And I want to talk to Pete about Liverpool because he's probably the most honest person that's not a Liverpool fan that I know about Liverpool. But just looking below it, Pete, when you look there, I think Chelsea. Are Chelsea 3 points, 4 points ahead of Manchester United? Sheffield United are the wild card, of course, with a game in hand and could go above Manchester United. What way do you see this figuring out? Because I have a feeling like, you know, I'm looking at Chelsea and they're being linked with Werner, they're being linked with Havertz, Sancho. You know, they're Chilwell from yourselves, and I'm looking going, what happens if they spend all this money and they don't get where they need to get? Who do you fancy, Pete? Because listen, Liverpool, Man City and Leicester for me are nailed on. You know, I think Leicester would be 7 points clear of Sheffield United if they won their game in hand, I think. And they'll have enough over 9 games. But who do you see, Pete, making up the top 4? Who's the last spot going to?
Wolves. For me, I think it's Wolves because when football restarts, and I've been watching the Bundesliga, and I've been following the teams who play more expansive football. I think when the football restarts, teams who are slightly more direct, and it's quite an easy thing to say, but get the crowd behind, etc., and maybe use home advantage an awful lot. And I'm not diminishing Sheffield United at all, but I think they're going to be inconvenienced by this. Man United, they won't have Old Trafford, essentially, because it will be just an empty stadium like any other. Yes, bigger than any other, but still it will be an empty stadium. And I just think the way that Wolves play, looking at what's happened in Germany, and I know it's not exactly going to be in the Premier League, but it's the style of football for me for Wolves. I think it would suit Wolves playing behind closed doors. I also think it will suit clubs like Liverpool, Leicester as well. I think it won't be a problem at all for Leicester, but I can see Wolves getting that 4th spot. I think Chelsea getting 5th place. I think Chelsea are a mightily interesting club with the players that they are signing, and they were going to back Frank. They always were. And Timo Werner, I can't believe Liverpool haven't gone for him. There must be another reason. There must be players in the pipeline. You guys will know better. But I think Chelsea will be okay in 4th. I think 5th will be Champions League because I can't see Man City being let off even if it's only for 1 year. If it gets reduced from 2 to 1, fair play. But I think they will be banned for a year. So we're talking, for me, 5th place. And it would be Wolves ahead of United and Sheffield United.
Yeah. Of course, I think Cass are having some sort of video link with Man City over, it might be the coming days or sometime next week, to discuss what's going on or give a judgment. I'm not too sure. I just heard something on the radio when I was driving the car the other day. It's one thing that's gone completely over my head, is the Man City thing. Not what's happening, but just when it's happening has gone completely over my head. Chris Brack has Wolves in 4th, Sheffield United 5th, both in the Champions League. He feels that Chelsea could be stuck. Keith, where are you looking at with this? Because, as I said, I think the top 3 are absolutely fine. Chelsea, you know, even if Sheffield United don't win it, I'm looking there, like, people are going on as if Chelsea are spending money to do A, B and C. But surely they're looking at it and they're saying to themselves, we need to get Champions League here, because they're 5 points clear of Wolves. They're 5 points clear of Sheffield United. They're 7 points clear of Spurs, and they're only 3 points ahead of United. Surely, could they be making, not a mistake, but taking a massive gamble here? Because anything could happen in football, but especially with all this delay, literally you could have. To me, it feels like, the last day of the season when stuff goes mental, and teams forget they're playing football, and you get 4 and 5 alls and 7 nils. I think you could have a lot of these over the next 9 to 10 games.
Yeah, I think there could be a bit of madness. Pete touched on something there a minute ago about teams not having the direct teams not having the home support. I think that's going to be huge. I think that's going to have a huge impact and goes. And the teams that, ourselves and Leicester and Man City aren't relying on, obviously we have an emotional tie with the crowd at Anfield, but I think we're so far ahead it's not going to impact on us. Leicester will be fine, Man City will be fine. Where everyone thinks like Wolves, I can understand where Pete's coming from with Wolves and Chris is saying about Sheffield United. I think the Man Uniteds and the Chelseas, when it just comes down to 2 teams playing against each other with no crowd and no maybe outside influences, the technically better teams I think are going to win. And I think Chelsea, depending on the players they have available, they should be beating whoever they're up against. The likes of Tammy Abraham, let's say, if he's playing up front for Chelsea, he won't have the pressure on him. All right, the pressure's going to be on him knowing that his replacement is being signed, but the pressure of, you miss one and the crowd isn't on your back, that could be huge for the likes of him. Mason Mount has the freedom of the place there as well. So Chelsea, I think their players' technical ability, I think, will get them through, and I think it'll be Chelsea and United that will get those 2 spaces, myself personally, because of the fact that in the Bundesliga it looks like the good teams, and I know Chelsea and United haven't been good. That's, using the term loosely, but the technically better players I think will stand out from the ones that need, the frenzy of the crowd and, the emotion of the day. I think that's going to catch a lot of the teams out. So I think it'll be Chelsea and United that get the 4th and 5th places, and we'll get into Europe, because I agree with Pete also that I think the City ban will be a ban, but it'll be appealed to 1 year instead of 2, but there will be a ban. So I think they'll get Champions League.
The only thing is, if they do get a ban, could they appeal it and continue to play in the Champions League for another year and then take the ban the following year? If City are found guilty of this, I think they should just get the 2 years. It's being put out there that 2 years is the ban. I don't know why, if they're found by CAS to be that the UEFA case is, absolutely fine. Why would you just go, it's absolutely fine, but only give them a year? That doesn't sit well with me. But it could be a massive thing. They are a side that can take that hit for a year, or 2 years is a bit of a stretch, but players are looking going a year out of the Champions League. I'm not too sure. Motivation gets lost. How does the Premier League go? People would say, they'd be absolute favourites for the Premier League because they have no European football. I don't agree with that. I think one pushes the other. You watch Liverpool, especially last season, they're going for a league title, would have been their first in 29 years, and they're still absolutely hammering the Champions League door while they're at it. One pushes the other, one feeds the other. For me, I'm a little worried on Chelsea, and I'm not even going to look at the 5th spot because we don't know what's going to happen with Man City. But just looking at 4th, I think I'm a little bit worried for Chelsea. I don't know if they're doing this themselves, but I think a lot of people are taking it for granted that Chelsea are in 4th place. There's only 3 points there. I think Manchester United make 4th place. I think they're on a nice little bit of form before the whole thing stopped. I don't think it's any harm for them that they're playing in empty Old Trafford. I don't think Old Trafford has been a massive backing for them over the last couple of years anyway. I'm not saying they've been at their throats, but you know, I know plenty of Manchester United fans that go to Old Trafford and tell you it's the quietest they've ever seen it in years. And I think when Keith talks about technical footballers, if Bruno Fernandes can keep up the form he had, I think that they've got a player that could really shape their season for them. I really like Rashford, and you know, at the back, yeah, I have reservations, but I think it might be Manchester United. I really do, but we'll have to wait and see. Before we get to the relegation talk, and that's even more interesting in my opinion, because just the ramifications for some of the clubs down there is absolutely massive. One in particular, in my opinion. But Pete, I just want to talk about Liverpool a little bit, because you know, when we're talking about a season and how teams have done and where they are, you know, to me it's phenomenal. To me, it's the best Liverpool side I've seen, and I include 87, 88 in that. I think it's just outrageous what they've done. To be 29 league games in, 27 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat. You have to just take your hat off to them, don't you?
Oh yeah, Liverpool. You mentioned earlier when we played Liverpool at the King Power, and we were the nearest challengers at the time in the league, and we had a club record amount of wins, which culminated in the 9-0 win away at Southampton. But all these highlights are not overshadowed by what Liverpool have been doing, because obviously I'm a Leicester fan and for Leicester fans, but you've got sitting in second place in the league as we were at the time, with the at the time unbeaten Liverpool running away with it, beating teams left, right, and centre. But it's just sensational to watch them on TV. It's an enjoyment. I know a lot of people out there who are not Liverpool fans. You know, there's always whining people about how many years it's been since they've won the league, and they don't want it to, you know, all avoid the season stuff and all that nonsense, load of rubbish. I've enjoyed them, and it was obvious for me from very early on that they were going to win the league, and they have won the league, and they deserve to. The game at the King Power was brilliant. The 4th goal, the final goal from Trent, Carlos Alberto-esque, Brazil 1970, a fantastic goal, and they were sensational. Leicester just couldn't get near them. And if we finish 3rd, for example, it will be one of the best seasons in the club's history. And you would look at the league table and go, actually, do you upgrade it? Because look at the team who have gone and won the league by 1 million points. They're a fantastic team. They're extremely well run, with a brilliant manager, a very likeable manager from the outside, from another club point of view. They play brilliant football, very easy to like, really good players, the likes of Trent, superb player. For me, as a genuine football fan who have got no allegiances to any other side apart from Leicester, and I don't really hate any other sides, obviously you've got your local kind of rivalry here, they've just been a real breath of fresh air. Last year we had the title race with Man City, but this year it's just been, for me, fantastic to watch. A shame they've gone so far and Leicester just couldn't hold on to the coattails, but you just got to take your hat off to them and enjoy it. Why moan about it? If you're an opposition supporter, there's nothing you can do about it. They're going to win the league by 1 million points. Just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, we have enjoyed it, in fairness. We've had a great time. And losing to Watford really didn't, you know, people wanted an invincible season and all that. I get where they're coming from, because it was definitely on, you know, what were we 26 games in or something at the stage, or 27 games in. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's 30 years since the league title, and I wouldn't care if we won it on the last day with the last kick to win it on goal difference. You know,
I'm glad
it's
we're
just.
not at that. I'm glad we're not.
Well, I'm glad we're not at that, because we mentioned this the other night. Could you imagine being 1 point clear and then a 3-month break before you have to come back? Liverpool's fan base would have imploded. Trust me, it would have actually it would have been the end of us. And, you know, Pete speaks earlier about the FA Cup and getting to an FA Cup and then not allowed being gone, or not allowed to be there. And the irony of it as a Leicester fan, trust me, Pete, we have loads of that stuff going on at Liverpool, you know, like fellas slipping over and other stuff like that. But, you know, like, Keith, there's an honest opinion of Liverpool, you know, from someone that doesn't support Liverpool, but for me is one of the most honest guys around when it comes to not only talking Liverpool, talking other clubs as well. Does it make you appreciate what you've seen more from Liverpool when you hear that?
It does, and I agree, Pete. I've always, like I said, I've liked Pete on that, and I've heard him on, and he is very honest. And you know, you'd expect, you know, there's this thing with Liverpool that people know the fans get wound up very easily, and the credit maybe doesn't always come as easily from rival fans. But you're hearing more and more of it, because you just have to, sometimes you just have to put your hand up and say, that's a great team. It's, as Pete touched on it there, it's a likeable manager for the neutrals. It's, you know, they're playing good stuff. They're not, despite what people claim about VAR, and Pete might have a few things about the Anfield game, about VAR with us, but, you know, the VAR was another myth that it was helping Liverpool to the league. Rival fans sort of had come around to it and had put their hands up and said, look, they're the best team and they do deserve it. And when you start hearing that from rival fans, you know it's been special, because the praise isn't that easily given if Liverpool are about to win the league, you know. So I think that is a testament to how good the team is and how well the season has gone. And not just this season, the progression under Klopp. You know, last season was an excellent season as well. And they just keep going on and moving it and doing that step at a time. It really has been great, and it's nice to hear from what other people think of it. It's not just us, you know, living in our own bubble and saying, oh yeah, we're great, aren't we? What do you mean we're not? What do you mean we're not? Like, so it is nice to hear other fans saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get on to the relegation zone, and when I tell you I was shocked at how tight it was between, say, 4th and 8th in the league, to look between 15th and 20th, I was like, lads, this is going to go off big time. And there's teams down there, and you're looking like Norwich to me are gone. That they're 6 points off safety. Although they're 6 points off safety with 9 games to go, we've seen it being done before, and they may come back and just go, listen, this is a 9-game season, and we need to go absolutely. They could literally just go mental and see what happens, because they've nothing to lose. But Pete, I'll come back to you. I'm looking at it there, and okay, Villa are second from bottom, but they've a game in hand. And a win there will bring them out of the relegation zone. But it would leave, at the moment, you're looking at Brighton on 29, West Ham 27, Watford 27, Bournemouth 27, Villa 25 with a game in hand, and Norwich on 21. Conceivably, any of those 6 could go down. Am I right?
Oh. Yeah, it's very tight away from Norwich. To perfectly honest, it's fantastic to have a conversation regarding relegation that doesn't involve Leicester.
Yeah.
Still, that's a good thing for a Leicester fan. Still, it's a novel conversation. Well, Norwich are down. I think Villa are down. I don't think they're good enough.
Yeah.
They stink the place out. I know they beat us over 2 legs in the semi-final of the League Cup, but Grealish aside, I just think they're a very poor side, and I just don't think they'll survive. Everyone's got a soft spot for Bournemouth. I think their games left this season are going to be extremely high scoring at both ends. I think they play the style of football where I think it will be an advantage. I think they'll survive. Watford had that upturning form with Big Nige. Great to see him back in the Premier League. What a hero, you know. Brilliant manager for me. And I think they could struggle, Watford. I think the Vicarage Road crowd is such a big thing. The way the stadium is. I've got a few friends who are working in Watford, and they have been very, very wary about playing behind closed doors. They think it's going to affect them an awful lot. And also Brighton, one of my best friends is a Brighton fan, and only yesterday we were talking regarding Brighton, and he says he thinks he's going to be a problem for them. They play a really good style of football, which I've already kind of pinned my tails on, that those teams I think will do well. It's just that they're not a good team. That's his assessment of Brighton. They play the right style.
Brighton's run in is horrendous as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just need to upgrade their players in every department. They're playing the right stuff. They've got the right manager. So for me, Norwich are down, Villa are down, and the team. I've not mentioned West Ham, but I think Watford will be the team who struggle. They've had one or two issues with players, as we know in the headlines regarding coming back to training, etc., etc. They're obviously going to get smashed in the first game because they take on Leicester. So they're going to start on the wrong foot, and I think it's going to be an issue for them. So Norwich down, Villa stink the house out, and Watford for me.
Okay, Keith, Villa's game in hand is Sheffield United at home, so it's key at both ends of the table there. You know, Sheffield United looking to go above Manchester United, and of course Villa looking to get out of the relegation zone. Pete mentioned West Ham there, and that's why I tried to get a West Ham fan on tonight, because for me, like, I'm looking at that. I think Norwich are down. I agree on the Villa thing, because Grealish aside, they tried to do too much too quick in the summer, in my opinion. They spent somewhere in the region of 155 million quid, if I remember right. And the players that you're kind of going, who is he? Who's this fella? Now, don't get me wrong, we've all seen players come into the Premier League and go, like Kante is probably the biggest example of that, where you go, who's he? And he turns out to be world class. But there's so many at Villa where you're going, you might get one or two right, but trying to get 9 and 10 right is extremely difficult in the Premier League when you've just come back up. I agree. I think Villa are in serious trouble. But for the one for me that it hinges the most on, I think, is West Ham. Because the reading I get from that club is that Moyes is a mad appointment. Yeah. If you're looking to go forward in any way, Moyes is a mad appointment. All right. And if you're looking to survive, he's a bit of a mad appointment as well. Yeah. You know, it's they've spent some horrific money, as Kev O'Sullivan says there, and the word is, if they go down, they are very, very close to literally being bankrupt. Yeah. Their owners must be absolutely beside themselves with worry now.
Yeah, that's one of the main things for them. They've invested so heavily. They moved to that new stadium, and you can see the fans aren't buying into it at all. You know, the support isn't there. And I know there's not going to be any fans at these games. And anyway, but the mood around West Ham was just toxic. It was, the stadium has gone from being Upton Park, and it's now out in Stratford or wherever it is, just outside. It's a good bit away. They're not getting the interest, and they're losing the thing that made them intimidating. It was a tough place to go, and they're losing that now. So they don't even have that in their back pocket. They did invest heavily. You know, they spent big money on Haller, on Fornals. You know, they spent big bucks there, and to be down in a scrap like this with David Moyes at the helm. Now, David Moyes, maybe 15 years ago, was a good manager for this sort of a battle, because when he was at Everton, he started off, a good season, a poor season, a good season, a poor season. But his CV in the last few years isn't screaming out to me that he can get them to safety. Now, if you look at the other managers, I know what you're saying about Watford, but I agree about Nigel Pearson. I think he can keep them up. I think he can get them motivated enough and get them playing enough football to keep them. Their position probably isn't a reflection. A lot of people thought they'd be better than they are, and I think their players are decent enough. If they can get them playing, I know there is dissent in the camp with, players' issues, concerns about the coronavirus and that sort of thing, but I just think they have a decent enough team. Brighton are falling like a stone. I'd be worried about them. Their form has been horrendous.
The running is horrendous.
Yeah, they're the ones that I'd look at, and I agree, by the way, about Villa. I think they're muck. I think they could be gone. Big, huge club. They spent 150 odd million, and they spent half of that making loans permanent of players that probably weren't good enough for the Premier League, and then spent the other half on players that were never good enough. So their business is the opposite to what Leicester have done, where they've spent wisely, But West Ham, I just think are in big trouble. I think there's owners there that committed. You know, I think that could be all out nearly. They could go.
There could
to
be
the
a bit
wall.
of a civil.
Go
I
to
think
the
there could be a bit of a civil war at that club
Yeah.
if they go down. I think and there won't be like a tug of war for power. It'll be who can get away from it quicker.
Yeah.
And who can get out with the least amount of pain. You know, the stadium thing hasn't worked for them for various reasons. You know, the scouting and stuff hasn't worked. And the appointment of Moyes just blows my mind. You know, just a little thing on Bournemouth. Pete said everyone has a soft spot for Bournemouth. I think that manager gets away with murder.
Yeah.
I think he signs players. You know, Liverpool are pawning £15 million players after him every 6 months, and he keeps taking it. And you know, all right, they've a ground that holds about 11 or 12,000, but they're spending big money, massive money. When you think it's Bournemouth, it all depends what Bournemouth turns up, because Bournemouth are known for going on a 6-game streak where they're really good, or they can have a 10-game streak where they just don't score a goal.
Yeah.
And it all depends what Bournemouth show up. It's going to be a sprint to the finish, I think. Like it's absolutely mad. Joe Riley says, do you reckon Leeds will get promoted this season? I think they will, yeah. I think Leeds will go up. Loads of Moyes chat here. Tommy C says, do you remember Moyes was the chosen one at United? Ferguson done that. Ferguson done that to enhance his own reputation. I don't think he was doing it for the good of Manchester United. And if he was doing it for goodness of Manchester United, you should take that statue down outside. But before we finish up,
The thing is with West Ham, if they do get relegated and are threatened with going out of business, they can do what another London club has done. HMRC, who play at Hart Lane, you can just borrow £150 million off the government at 0.5%. How that has gone through, I have no idea. So HMRC, who are currently in 8th place, whether they're going to try and challenge for Europe or not, but yeah, I wonder what's going to be on the front of their shirts next season. Is it going to be get your tax returns in?
The funny thing about Spurs is that, you know, these are meant to be billionaire owners.
Yeah.
So where are they going to the revenue to get that money? Why aren't the owners just going, listen, we'll give you the loan? You know, like Liverpool's owners loaned the club the money to build the main stand at Anfield. You know, no little or no, I think they only just had to pay the inflation on it, and that was it. Why are Spurs going to the authorities to get money when these are meant to be billionaire owners and a really well run club? That stadium has a go on, P.
Well, I was just saying, if they said that they're going to use it to underpin the club because they've missed out on revenue from having no one in the stadium in terms of other sporting events as well. But the problem is, if they spend £40 million on centre forward, I've bought that centre forward. And what happens if Leicester's sitting there going, well, hang on, can we have £150 million, please, 0.5%? And then we go and spend. It's just wrong. I don't think a Premier League side can be borrowing money from government. That's weird. Yeah. If they can go to a bank and get it, fine. But not the government. There's something really wrong there, and it sets a really dangerous precedent, because what happens if clubs get relegated and they need money? They can just turn around and try and do the same.
But you know what, with it as well, Pete,
wonder. Go on, Keith.
No, I just want to quickly say the thing about that as well is it's got very little fanfare. You know, it's not that it's sneaking under the radar, but it's not being given maybe it's not being highlighted as much as maybe it should be, because you're spot on what you say there, and it's just going along. You know, no one's really mentioning it, and it's nearly a bailout of Spurs by the taxpayer. Like that's crazy. That should be more, you know, well known than it actually is. There should be more uproar about it, and it's just not. It's weird.
Owen Bork says Joe Lewis is the 5th richest man in the UK. So there you go. If they're going in and getting that sort of loan, I presume the government have some sort of interest in that stadium. You know, I don't mean a holding on it, but you know, they have to have something. You can't be just going, listen, give us 150 million quid and we pay you back at 0.5%. There has to be something more to it than that, and it'll probably come out as soon as Spurs go to sign a player. You'll probably see the actual real reason for that happening, or a more detailed reason as to why it happened. Before we before we, Chris Brack says Spurs aren't relevant, so that's why there's no kickoff about it. But before we get to the end, I just want to look a bit forward and beyond the season. You know, we've spoken about, you know, we know where the title is going. We think Norwich are down. We have a feeling on Villa, Watford have been mentioned, Brighton, stuff like that, West Ham, for more than football reasons, I suppose. But when the season ends, we're going to have a transfer window. We're going to get back into the next season fairly quick. Pete, we done a show going back probably a week or two ago, and we picked, I think it was about 9 Premier League teams that we wanted to look at and basically try shape their transfer window. I ended up at Leicester, and I was making the argument that the squad they have is really, really good. Getting into Europe, they might need to add to it, but I did say I'm worried about Brendan Rodgers in Europe for good reason, I think. And the other thing is, Brendan Rodgers spending at a certain level worries me as well. So I put forward the likes of a Timo Pukki from Norwich. I put forward a Chris, was it Azier from Celtic, the centre back, a bit of forward planning on Johnny Evans. But my main argument about Leicester was they have a really, really good mix there. And I wouldn't like to see Rodgers take 2 or 3 steps forward when all he needs to do is 1. Are you in that camp, or would you like to see them add significantly?
I think with the team they've got at the moment, there are certain areas which are going to be important to bulk up. First of all, I can see Ben Chilwell going. I think that's just going to be a natural sell-on of a player to, say, a Chelsea for a fair few quid. We've still got Christian Fuchs at the club, and also James Justin we bought last year from Luton, who has been exceptional when he's played 1 or 2 games. It's a classic sign a player from a club like Luton, give them a full year at the club, and then he can play first team football in the Premier League. Very, very good player. So if Chilwell goes, not a problem. I would like to see them bulk up the forward line, because with Jamie Vardy, you've got Kelechi Iheanacho behind. I think they could do with more of a physical presence. We're missing someone like a Leo Ojoa, who we've had for a number of years, who's no longer at the club. Someone like Eduardo at Celtic would be, for me, a very easy signing in terms of the fit of the player. How Leicester progress next season? You mentioned actually regarding Leicester being or Rodgers being progressive. The most progressive club in England in the Premier League is Leicester. There's no doubt about it. From where we were, when we promoted to winning the league, to now, we're going to be moving into a new £100 million training ground within the next few weeks. One of the best training grounds in Europe. The stadium's going to be expanded. Plans were put on hold after the sad incident at the King Power a few years ago. They're extremely, extremely well ran, from Vishai now to top, to Susan Whelan, the chief executive, who's been there the whole time. Unbelievably well ran from top to bottom, and the way that they look after supporters, etc. It's just an absolute delight to be a supporter, to go to the game of my old man, who's a season ticket holder for a number of years. It says it's just so easy. It's done really well. And look at the team. I think next season, 1 or 2 signings to maybe cover for 1 or 2 sales. They need to keep hold of players, of course. We mentioned Wilfred and Ndidi. Hopefully no injuries to major star players. You mentioned about Europe as well. Rodgers' record in Europe, to be honest, I don't think it really matters at Leicester, because Leicester fans like a run in Europe, but they will take every game as a jolly. They'll go in their numbers if they're allowed to. They'll support them at home, and previous records in Europe doesn't really count, because we managed to get to the quarterfinals of the Champions League somehow with Shakespeare in charge at one point. It was just a ride. So previous record doesn't count. If we go into Europe year in, year out, that's when you want to start to build up previous record of Rodgers there. Problem. It's just really exciting. It's really exciting. Who could we buy? If you're a player in Europe and you want to play in the Premier League, Leicester not only now can afford play, we can attract them with the facilities which we've never had. Filbert Street, come on. The new training ground, and you know you're going to play. You know you're going to be given a chance. You know you've got the opportunity to win things, play in Europe, and also you've got the ability to then move to one of the big clubs. the list is there. Maguire, Mahrez, possibly Chilwell. Hasn't worked out for Drinkwater, but there we go. And N'Golo Kante. If you play well at Leicester, you can move to one of the big boys.
Yeah, and as well as that, buying well when you have to sell these players, I think is a massive thing. Owen Burke reckons that Rodgers will buy Bertrand to replace Chilwell. Avo wants to see Pete on the week before we play them to give us a lowdown on how they're doing. I'll check how much Pete is charging, and I will try to get him in before the 2 games next season, of course. Listen, it's been a brilliant show. It's been a brilliant chat about Leicester, about the race for Champions League and relegation and stuff like that. Keith, we're back on Sunday night, isn't that right?
Yep, that's right,
Yeah.
Gav. Yeah.
Okay. We're back on Sunday night. I think we're trying to get Matt and we're trying to get Grays and we're trying to do another Fatback 4 podcast Sunday night. We're going to take Friday and Saturday off if that's okay with everybody. And then of course we're into actual football happening. So we will try I suppose cover as much football as we possibly can in the weeks that look, it's going to be great to have the football back and actually chat about it. Pete, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And I don't know if you heard me that time, but the lads want to see you back before both Liverpool versus Leicester games next season, if that's okay with you. No, it's still delaying on Pete. But look, I'll contact Pete and I will sort that out as we go. Pete and Keith, didn't realise that you rhymed. But there you go. It's one of those. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great show. As I said, we'll see you again on Sunday. And over and out.